differences were remarkable. During the first stage of transition in the 90s, income inequality increased everywhere across the transition region. However, the rate at which inequality increased was very different. Some countries, for example, Czech Republic, Slovak Republic, Hungary and Slovenia, managed to keep inequality even during the first stage of transition very low. And they managed to keep inequality low also during the second stage of transition. And they are among the lowest income inequality countries now in the world, around 0.20 Gini coefficient. Other countries, such as the Baltic countries and Poland, observed and experienced an increase during the first 10 years, very remarkable, of inequality, which then stabilized at the end of the second decade. For the former Soviet Union countries, the history was completely different, and they reached very high levels of inequality, amongst the highest levels in the world. Well, we have to distinguish again the first stage of transition, in which the rise in inequality was mainly driven by massive institutional change, privatizations, the emergence of new markets, deregulation of prices, deregulation of labor and product markets, and new models of corporate governance. This produced huge macroeconomic imbalances. Huge in the sense that the output drop was not only deeper than expected, but more persistent. And this gave room to a huge increase in inequality, unexpected by economists and policymakers who did not implement any countervailing measure, hoping that the free market and the forces of free competition would lead to a recovery. Later on, during the years 2000, other drivers more typical of developed economies took place and gained importance, and there are technological change, the forces of globalization, including the position of these countries in the international division of labor, and of course labor market institutions and welfare and transfer systems. Well, what happened on the labor market played the lion's share on income inequality, both on the side of quantity, with the creation of huge unemployment and under-unemployment pools, and on the side of the wage distribution, which was much wider than before, of course. Little role was instead played by capital income, especially at the beginning, basically because these countries were young countries in terms of wealth accumulation, and the scanty literature on the effect of welfare systems reports that the role of social transfers was very limited. And Milanovic, for example, reports that paradoxically pensions played a pro-inequality role in Central Europe and in Russia, probably related to the fact that they exacerbated duality between those who had an income and then got a pension and those who were at the margin of the income distribution. Well, again, we have heterogeneity across the transition region. In general, Central and Eastern European countries have higher mobility compared to Western countries. By higher mobility here, I mean intragenerational mobility, so not between generations, but mobility of the same household or individual. Baltic countries and Poland have higher income mobility. Czech Republic, Slovak Republic again have lower mobility. Poland in particular has high mobility, but also higher probability to have downwards mobility. So if we look only at upward mobility, what is very different from Western Europe in Eastern and Baltic countries is that the role of education, for example, is quite limited, and a more important role is instead played by the composition of the household and by the experience, which poses very interesting questions in terms of the role of the welfare state, of family support and transfer and social transfers.